Okay, I'm just going to recap this. We had some technical difficulties with batteries. So, as you see, I double checked this. I was solving the absolute value of 2x plus 5 equals 13. Created two equations, one with a positive 13, one with a negative. Did the quick algebra, and now I'm just plugging them in to check. So I plugged this in, got 13. Absolute value of 13 is 13. Plug this in, and this is the absolute value of negative 18 plus 5, right, which is negative 13. The absolute value of negative 13 is also 13, so that checks. All right, so those are my two answers. So my answer would actually be x equals 4, negative 9. Okay, so let's move on to another problem. Sometimes you might have to move things around a bit. So here's a problem. 3 plus the absolute value of x equals 7. Okay? But I've got to isolate this. I've got to get this by itself before I can make the two equations. So subtract 3, the absolute value of x equals 4. And then I create my two equations. X equals 4, x equals negative 4. And obviously we don't have to do any more work because they're already solved. So that's just an example of how you have to isolate that absolute value sign or symbol. Okay? Now let's go to another one. What happens if there are more than one absolute value sign? Okay? All right, now this kind of seems a little complicated, but it's not really that complicated. You have two possibilities for this one and two possibilities for this one. So technically, there's 4 different equations that should be made, right? This equals the positive of this equals the negative of this, and then this equals the positive of this equals the negative of this. But that's just a lot of unnecessary work. So what happens is 2 equations are made, just like it normally would be. So you've got either 2x minus 3 equals x plus 5, or 2x minus 3 equals negative x plus 5. Notice that this is in parentheses and the negative goes and applies to both of them. Because essentially what's going to happen is it's either going to be, let's say, a positive and a negative, a positive and a positive, a negative and a positive, a negative and a negative. But these are going to end up being the same, right? Because I could just divide each side by a negative and they'd be the positive. And these, if I just move that negative over, it'd be this. And that's why we only do 2 equations, okay? And then we solve those algebraically, making sure the biggest thing we want to think about is distributing that negative to both of these, okay? So over here I can just say minus x, x minus 3 equals 5, plus 3, x equals 8. Then over here I'm going to say 2x minus 3 equals a negative x minus 5, right? Plus x. So that means 3x minus 3 equals negative 5 plus 3, 3x equals negative 2 divided by 3. So x equals negative 2/3 or 8. All right? So don't be scared if you see one of those because you're going to solve it just the exact same way, create 2 equations. The last thing that I want to talk about is solving inequalities that have an absolute value. So here we go. 3x minus 2 is less than 4. All right? This is the same idea, but it requires one more step. So I'm going to write out 3x minus 2 is less than 4, and then 3x minus 2 and a negative 4, but my sign is going to change. my sign is going to change. And if you think about it, on a number line, right, that if it is less than 4, right, the distance from 0 is less than 4, then a mirror of that is that it would be what? Greater than negative 4, right? So that makes sense. So less than 4, greater than negative 4. Okay? So after we get it, we solve it. Plus 2, 3x equals 6. X equals 2. Oh, I'm using equals, but I can't. They're actually less than, right? So x is less than 2. Then over here, we've got plus 2, 3x is greater than negative 2 divided by 3, divided by 3. X is greater than negative 2/3. Okay? And you can always check this, even if not using this exact number. Think about a number that's less than 2 and greater than negative 2/3. Less than 2 and greater than negative 2/3. Well, a 0 is a pretty easy number, right? So let's plug 0 in and make sure we're doing it correctly. 3 times 0 is 0 minus 2. 0 minus 2 is a negative 2, right? The absolute value of a negative 2 is 2. Is 2 less than 4? Yes. So that means that we're correct. Okay? And that is a brief overview of 4.3, but I will give you even more information when I see your smiling faces in class.